Thanks for joining us here today. Let's start off by just running down the line, and so that everybody knows what you're up to and who you are. Just a quick intro who you are and what you're building. And we'll start with
sure
Tom.
thing. Hey everyone, I'm Tom Quisel, co-founder and CEO at Musubi. We do AI content moderation, and we do it for platforms like marketplaces and social apps that have to deal with trust and safety on a daily basis. They face challenges like keeping fraud, scams, and toxicity off their platforms. And today, they collectively spend over $10 billion on human moderators. And universally, we hear that human moderation approach is expensive, slow, and inconsistent. And on top of that, it's a very grueling job that's difficult for humans to do. And so we've developed an adaptive AI system that learns from moderators and automates 70 to 90% of the work that they do today. And the impact this is having for our customers, we're able to protect 45 million users across our customers. And it enables scalability, and platforms that previously could not add features because of moderation and safety issues are now able to add those features and grow the kind of community capabilities. So it's really transforming the way trust and safety is done today.
I'm Dhaval Shiyani. I'm the founder and CEO of Gimbal Space. We build components for modern satellites. Basically, we allow satellites to launch rapidly and affordably, given the new revolution in satellites becoming closer to Earth, much more readily deployable, much more quick to launch in space. We want to basically allow companies to build things in space and really democratize access.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca. I'm the founder and CEO of Glacier. So Glacier is building automation for recycling. And typically, when you think about recycling, a lot of folks think about like a nice-to-have, feel-good, sustainable thing to do for the planet. But actually, recycling is a critical pillar of our manufacturing infrastructure, because at the end of the day, it's a way to get our hands on new raw material and bring that back into our circular supply chain. So Glacier is building purpose-built AI and robots that we install in recycling facilities, including the main Recology facility that serves the entire city of San Francisco, to do two things. One is to actually collect really rich, real-time data at scale on what's in that recycling and that waste stream, which we're using to help recyclers improve their operations, like a modern-day manufacturing plant, as well as major brands and producers like Amazon and Colgate-Palmolive to actually understand where all of their packaging is going and take steps to recover and improve the design of it. And then we also have a great purpose-built robot that we install into these facilities to automate that sortation and decontamination task, which historically has been done predominantly manually. So we're doing that. We're upskilling the labor force and staunching a very critical gap in the current sortation workforce.
So cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Amber. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called NextWork, and I'm here from New Zealand. NextWork is a tool for learning and showcasing skills. So we want to make sure that anyone can learn any vocational skill, anytime, any place, anywhere, on any device, in the way that they learn best. We really want to make sure that we're meeting the skill demand to solve the world's toughest problems.
Cool. Yeah, my name is Rehaan. I'm one of the co-founders of AlphaXiv. And at AlphaXiv, we are trying to connect the research world. So we have built a collaborative research platform for researchers to read, share, and discuss papers. It's a place where you can connect with other researchers, form communities around groups and ideas. And the goal here is to really build a network of researchers and unify what is a very fragmented world of online research communities.
Amazing. Thanks, guys. So if you were to go to our website and read the backgrounds of these founders, you would be dazzled, because you guys have incredible backgrounds, educations, et cetera. You could have done so many things in life, and you chose one of the hardest paths there is, entrepreneurship. Why? Why this when the world is your oyster? And anyone can start off. But tell us about your journey, decision to do this crazy thing.
I can start. So building Glacier, the draw for me was not really this lofty ideal of entrepreneurship. It really did feel like a calling. So we started Glacier about 5 years ago. This was around the same time that the UN's IPCC report came out that we have until optimistically 2030 to prevent irreversible climate change. It was also around the time when China passed National Sword, which was this legislation that effectively closed their borders to all recyclable imports on the premise that what we were sending to them as our number one customer of recyclables was basically trash, right? And so suddenly you see this really stark backdrop for a really important sustainability pillar where recyclers were reckoning with potentially going out of business because they lost their biggest customer, they didn't have a way to process their goods profitably. And then having grown up kind of in Silicon Valley, working at a number of tech startups, I had the great pleasure of seeing all of these novel innovations in the realms of AI, industrial automation, seeing the cost curves come down, the development cycles get shorter and shorter. And to me and to my co-founder, this really did feel like a unique opportunity to use our DNA and our skill sets and what we knew about technology to really come in and plug this very urgent and massive gap in the recycling system. So we've been doing it now for 5 years, and frankly, it's been an incredible journey.
Yeah, just jumping off the back of that, I think a very similar sort of thing. I never set out to get into the whole startup or VC world. I've only ever worked for myself, and straight out of a software engineering degree at university, I was helping people to learn new skills, find new careers, get upskilled, just do something they wanted to do with their lives. And I really fell in love with the people that I was helping. I think that the one-on-one work that I did in those first few years building up the business, I just became really, really involved in these people's lives. And I remember the first customer I had who called me up and said, yeah, this worked, and my family's moving countries, and I'm doubling my pay rise and all of these things. And he was crying, and I was crying, and every year they send me updates on their family, new kids. I mean, it was a moment where I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. And then it wasn't until several years into that where I reached a point where I thought, okay, this is either going to go to an acquisition or I can just lay on the beach and retire. And so I just made this list of what I wanted to do with my life at that point, attached years to all of the things on that list, and realized there was more on that list than I had years left to live. And it was at that point that I thought, okay, I need to be moving faster than I am. And started reaching out to more people and found the whole VC world. And that's where NextWork, I think, really became a product and took off. But it started with the people and the impact and, the problem that I wanted to solve.
Yeah, cool. I would agree with that. For us, starting a company felt more like a means to an end, of where, as a founding team, we were all last year undergrads doing research in robotics and reinforcement learning at Stanford, and we all had a shared common experience that research felt very siloed, and there was a lack of collaboration. So rather than jumping in and starting a company, we were doing AI research. So we thought, let's learn some web engineering, just put up a site, see what happens. And within every few weeks, we had this site that was sitting on a singular server that was costing $30 a month, and we saw it was getting traction. Every few weeks, people kind of make the rounds on LinkedIn or Twitter, and sooner or later we figured out, or we realized that we had to do something here if we wanted to grow the site properly. We could be a research project forever or become a company and grow this the right way. And so that's kind of what informed our decision-making process. So 8 months ago, we decided to incorporate, and we definitely haven't looked back since. So, yeah.
I was always interested in space. It's the final frontier, a lot of untapped potential, and frankly, super exciting to work on. But about starting the company, that happened through my experiences in working in different parts of the industry. I was doing electric propulsion for satellites. I worked on rockets and then imaging satellite constellations. I kind of noticed this common problem of many of these components and subsystems still not catching up to the requirements of today. So they were designed in the 70s and 80s, never kind of redesigned, re-engineered. And I kept complaining about that, like at every place I worked, and someone should fix this. And I thought like I should be the one to fix it. So that's how I started Gimbal about a year and a half ago, trying to really kind of build things that modern satellites need, and also kind of allow them to rapidly take advantage of the lowering cost of launch. So that's what we do.
I love that common thread of passion. That's the reason for everyone here, I think. Yeah, so for me, it came out of a need that I identified in previous roles. So formerly, I was the CTO at OkCupid and Grindr, and worked with a lot of vendors in the space to solve trust and safety problems we were facing, and just saw that they were coming short of what I thought was possible. And as I went through that experience more and more, I noticed that over my career, it was always the kind of problem I was most passionate about dealing with, was like helping the team solve scammers who were attacking or solve a toxicity issue. It felt like it was particularly important for the user experience on a platform. And seeing this need for something better to come into the world was really what drove me to start the company. And that's just the seed, like that's the idea, that's the drive. And then I had kind of a few check boxes I needed to check before actually starting a company. One was finding a co-founder, one was an initial design partner customer, and then one was some early investment. And fortunately, I was able to find all of those things. Found an incredible co-founder, fantastic early customer, great early investor, like super values aligned, and that just made it all real. That's what converted it from idea into a real company.
I want to touch on the AI again. We've been talking about that a lot today, and relate it to some of the themes that Keval mentioned in his opening. He talked about the future of work, and Amber, you're kind of reimagining education. When we think about jobs, your robots and your AI are, doing things that humans used to do. AI is really touching all of your businesses in super interesting ways. Why don't you talk a little bit more about some of the opportunities that you see today and tomorrow as AI really starts to take hold?
Yeah, for sure. Happy to start. So for us, I think there's the future of work side, and then there's kind of the impacts of AI directly on trust and safety. And so in terms of future of work, like what we're seeing, and I touched on it, is that moderation is a very difficult job. People cycle out of it quickly. There's a lot of turnover. I think many people think, and I don't think it's the kind of thing that people should be doing. It's very difficult. And so what we think about a lot is how to transform the job into something that's more empowering, more of a knowledge worker job. And the opportunity that we see there, and we've been realizing, is that what makes the work so difficult is the repetitive nature of it. And that's exactly what AI can help with. Moderators identify a new pattern. They find a new kind of attack, a new sort of toxic phrase that's come up. They identify that, and then flag it for the AI to learn and incorporate. And then AI can implement that at scale. And so what you get is a system where moderators are looking at new situations all the time. They're not having to move super quickly and make a decision every 20 seconds. They can dive in and be more thoughtful. And then AI scales that out. And so we see a future that's brighter. It's lifting humans up and people up into doing work that's more creative and interesting. The other side of it, I think, that's fascinating, that's more of a danger, is basically what happens when AI is in the hands of bad actors. You might have seen these really interesting articles about large organized crime and sort of failed government-associated organizations that are spamming, doing commercial behavior on all kinds of different apps, and basically stealing billions of dollars from legitimate users. And it's a huge industry, and it's all an ROI kind of industry. So the more money they can make for less cost, the more they'll do it. And AI is really improving that ROI for them. You can have an extremely convincing fake user, scam people more effectively than ever before. So that's a major threat that we've been thinking a lot about. And our thesis is that you need an AI defense to protect against an AI threat like that. So that's both the opportunity and the risk that we're seeing with AI.
Yeah, I think for the recycling supply chain as well, AI is helping to answer never before answered questions. So when you walk into one of these recycling facilities, it's a very data-rich environment in that you're literally processing many, many, many tons of material every day, but there's previously not really ever been a way to understand what's coming through that material stream or make improvements to it. So I'll give you one example. One of our customers, his name is Jay, and he runs a recycling facility down in Monterey, California, so not too far from here. And he is one of the most data-centric customers I've ever met. But when I met him, he was telling me that one of his ways for improving operations in his facility is that he had installed a GoPro camera on top of one of the conveyor belts that was transporting all of the remaining trash to landfill. So in other words, everything on there should have been zero value, all the good stuff got picked out, but he knew there was stuff still in there. So he literally mounted this GoPro, and he told me he spent an hour every single day just going frame by frame and manually counting how many bottles and cans and other recyclables he missed, and then trying to make changes upstream and see how that impacted it the next day. So when I told him that we had an AI model that we could literally just pop onto that camera and use to give him a second-by-second analysis of every single item coming down his belt, you can imagine like how many orders of magnitude more efficient that process suddenly became, right? And that's one of dozens of examples of how our customers have been actually using this data to improve their operations, their efficiency, their overall throughput. And so we've just seen this type of AI capability yield incredible results for our customers. And as the boundaries of AI improve, the performance of those models also improve. You can imagine the waste stream, it includes, infinite amounts of different types of stuff. So the ability of an AI model to not just detect an aluminum can or a PET bottle, but also to detect all the weird stuff that we throw out. Like I've personally seen Christmas lights, car motors, surfboards. We have customers that tell us often like hand grenades and ammunition come through their facility, right? There's absolutely a critical need for this type of detection as it evolves more quickly.
Don't put hand grenades in your trash, folks.
Yeah, I don't know who's doing that, but we've had at least half a dozen customers cite that example.
AI has already been changing a lot of things in space on the application side, not more on the hardware side. But to give you like a super interesting example I encountered like last week, one of our customers whose payload or instrument we're putting up in space is using their instrument to monitor the weather patterns and actually use AI to predict earthquakes. And their current models can predict earthquakes within weeks, but they'll get to days and hopefully hours soon. So that's how like AI will transform everything in terms of like just applications from space. There's so much data available on remote sensing, on weather predictions, on basically agriculture, mining, everything else you can imagine. Another cool example is you can actually study the shadows of the lids on oil containers and tell how much the oil containers are filled and kind of predict global oil demand just by AI and just by putting satellites up in space that actually kind of gather that information 24/7, 365 days across the globe. So there's like a lot of opportunity with AI. How that will transform to like actually hardware and building of the satellites and components themselves is yet to be seen, but we have long, big ambitions, so we'll see.
And while we've got you, another interesting slide that Keval showed us was just the decline, the cost of space is really going down.
Yeah.
And I think that really does material impact what you're endeavoring. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so basically like putting things up in space until even like the early 2000s was a very expensive endeavor. And all of that has changed thanks to one company and one now very polarizing man. But significant reduction in cost to launch allows people to use to put more and more powerful things in space that are not just like kind of research-based smaller satellites, but now satellites have become bigger, which allows better payloads, better instruments, real kind of value to be gained from space. And all of that transformation has happened mostly due to SpaceX. But after SpaceX, a lot of other companies like Rocket Lab and a lot of other entities like the Indian Space Research Organization, allowing people to put satellites in space much more quickly, much more affordably. So that has led to like this explosion of just space startups, not just like here, but everywhere around the world. Another trend that has led to is since putting things up in space has become cheap, it's not become cheap for every single kind of altitude. So it's become cheap for low Earth orbit. Going to like geostationary orbit is still pretty expensive, requires a lot more fuel. The delta differences here might not seem like a lot, but it's like low Earth orbit is 500 kilometers from the surface. A geostationary orbit is 22,000 kilometers for the surface. So it requires a lot more kind of oomph to get to that point. So what it's making people do is design smaller satellites, but increase the number of satellites and put them in lower Earth orbit. And actually use low Earth orbit to do many things like communication, surveillance, remote sensing. So that's where like the industry has shifted, bigger satellites closer to Earth.
All right, folks, start thinking of your questions. While we hear a little bit from you, Amber, on just staying on this AI topic, but I think, obviously, your NextWork is helping people reskill in a world where some jobs are going away. On the other hand, when I think about AI and education, as a parent of a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old, I'm like, are they ever going to learn how to write? Or is ChatGPT just going to do their homework for them forever? So I'm curious to hear about it in the context of NextWork and generally how you're thinking about AI and education.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we see AI, like the impacts of it everywhere we go. Certainly in the problem and like the demand for upskilling, AI is huge. I mean, you can look back and following every major revolution that we've had, the industrial, the agricultural, there's always been a huge shift in education. And I think that the AI revolution is going to be no exception to that at all. The number of people that need to learn new skills, that need to upskill, the rate that's happening is unbelievable. And we're certainly seeing it for ourselves. I think also how people are learning is drastically changing. You go into any university now and everyone's on GPT and searching for content and learning that way. And you can see that in the drop in, kind of trust, I would say, and this question of why go to a university or why pay for any sort of course if you can generate one for free on any relatively good LLM. And the answer to that, the reason that you would ever pay for education or a learning experience at all is because you believe it to be a better total experience. It turns out that learning is not just access to content. Learning is actually made up of 3 critical steps, which is access to great content that's suited to you, it's great support, and then it's the ability to showcase the skills that you've learned in a way that society is going to recognize and value and respect. And while AI today, LLMs are great at generating some good learning material, they're not really following the full cycle there. They're not providing a one-stop shop for great content, great support, and then showcasing that skill in the marketplace all in one place. There is not anyone out there. There's still a first mover advantage for someone to come out and do that really, really well. And that's what NextWork is trying to do. So I think that AI is completely changing how we think about upskilling. It's completely changing what it means to be a learner. And it's an incredibly exciting time. I don't think there's ever been a better time. Excuse me. Largely because the business model has changed. For the first time, pretty much ever, someone is no longer paying for access to content. And that means that the existing setup that we have for learning is in real trouble. It's a very, very interesting time for learning and education, for sure.
Any questions from the audience? Yeah.
So in the last panel, they were talking with Salesforce. No, thank you. In the last panel, we were talking with Salesforce, Amazon, companies with 10,000, 100,000 employees, more. They're talking about how they're using AI across all of their organizations. You're getting the opportunity to start from scratch. right? So maybe you can talk about it. Like, how are you thinking about building your companies when there's all the conversation around, do we even need anyone to do that, or can you just build your whole company and AI and agentic everything along the way?
Yeah. So yeah, I guess I have some thoughts on that. I guess in essence, a social network company. For us, the way we see AI is that there's no doubt for researchers, there are AI tools that help a lot, and we have that on our platform. You can imagine like literature reviews or summarizing papers, those are there. One thing we have to be careful about is people will come to us and see our site. It's a network of AI researchers. There's all these AI tools, agentic stuff. And people look at us and say, wait, you need to build, or VCs will come to us and say, hey, you need to build an AI research scientist. That needs to be your company. And for us, we try to be careful with that because our emphasis is still on building like a human network, like a network of researchers that are connecting with each other. And the AI, no doubt, like improves the user experience. There's tools that researchers derive a lot of use from. But for us, we still think the biggest value add to what we're doing is the network. And I guess as a concrete example, like if I'm a researcher and I'm interested in something, really niche in the AI space, so like LLM post-training, that's a niche subject, I could sit down and use an AI tool to get the literature review of what's happening in that space. Or I could see a community of researchers that are doing LLM post-training and like see what are they working on. And for me, that reality is a lot more promising than just AI tooling being our whole company. But it's a thing that comes up a lot, with AI and agents, that we need to completely become an AI company.
Yeah, I would say like tangibly in terms of tools that we use and how we're thinking about structurally setting up NextWork. There's no doubt that every single person in the team is 100% using AI for their own workflows. And the way that I hire is also changing. I'm looking for really great engineers that are going to be able to adapt very quickly. And then I'm hiring generalists. And that's pretty much it. Everyone can kind of learn from there. But I think there's also, probably a myth around just how much of a magic pill AI is for a company as well. I had someone last week say, we've got 7 people on our team. They said, oh, you should just be able to do it with 2. And it's like, well, at some point, you do need some people to actually be able to do this thing and to pull it off. So I think that absolutely, like, you're getting a lot more done with less people. But if there's if the mission is big and there's a lot that you need to do, then you still do need like a critical mass of some point to be able to execute on that. But it changes definitely the hiring, I would say for sure.
Any other thoughts on Gleb's question?
I think it kind of like depends on the type of business you're running as well. So like for us, it's mostly like kind of back office stuff that we can use like AI for to automate some of the things, but it's still like, it's not at a point where it can be like fully left to itself without any kind of human intervention to some point. Anyone who builds a true general purpose assistant, which is action-based, has like my money for whatever period of time. Like that is still missing. So I think when we get to that point, we'll probably more replace, kind of worry about like replacing human labor. But right now there's still a lot of value.
Other questions? Come on, you guys. Oh, I see a hand. Yes.
Hi, I'm just curious, when you're thinking about your partnership with investors, what's important to you right now? What are you looking for in an investment partner?
Yeah, I can answer that. I mean, for us, the top piece is a great relationship, someone who will contribute constructively and be helpful, bring value without bringing negatives in a serious way. So that's the key element. I think the money is a secondary consideration. So it's all about relationship for us.
Yeah, I think like obviously that is important, but also someone who is kind of understands that building businesses is like tough and can change and evolve, and like the nature of building any business at especially like an early stage is a very kind of like hazy prospect and it's not a full-formed kind of idea, and like is willing to help shape that, and also kind of like be patient with that is really helpful. Also, like the other things is obviously the skills that they bring in, like having seen this cycle before, can be extremely valuable when we're building out our business and the team.
I think one thing that comes to mind for us building a very sort of unique and sort of multi-channel business is our most helpful investor relationships on our cap table are investors who, it might sound a little funny, but they have a very good understanding of what unique strengths they're bringing to the table and what unique perspectives, and then also where maybe they don't actually have a huge wealth of knowledge and know that they maybe should be deferring to others in the room. So I think we all work, whether they're with investors or just other colleagues, there are some folks who just love to opine on every single topic that gets brought up, right? But the investors that I turn to first are the ones who will be very open with me about here's how I would break down a problem, but to be honest, like this is not an area where I have a ton of expertise. Maybe they'll introduce you to others in their network who do. And I think that's actually helped me as a leader of this company to figure out whom I should be speaking to for what, right? So I'd really urge any of the investors in the room to think about like where is your competitive edge and how do you bring that forth most for your portfolio?
Yeah, I really appreciate it when investors will often proactively come to you and like let you know of an unknown that you don't even know to look for. I think it's most investors I've been talking to and had, they're very responsive if you go out and ask for help directly. Like, this is exactly what I need. Can you help me with this? Like, sure, no problem. Where it's really useful is when someone is coming to me just, out of the blue and is like, hey, I've noticed that this is going on. Have you thought about that? And often I'm like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Like, I didn't even know to think about that. That's so useful. So those ones are really, that makes a huge difference, I think. And I really get the sense that this person is very invested in our success. Just running to the restroom real fast.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. I think it definitely feels like more of a relationship and mentorship thing here, where being a trusted voice on the table for us and having advice that we think is useful and aligns with their experience has been really helpful for us.
Great. Well, hopefully you know that this incredible Shakti community filled with people with lots of expertise is here for you guys, and we hope you'll tap into it. I think we are going to wrap up in a few minutes, so why don't we close with this question. One of the things that I've learned about the early stage is that you are all building products that will likely evolve or change, dramatically over time in some cases. Thinking 5-10 years down the road, where do you see your companies, in the future? You can pick the time horizon, but yeah, where are you going? Start with you.
Yeah, sure. So our long-term vision of what we want to do with AlphaXiv is we see this as the complete home for a researcher and have a fully fledged network. And I think one thing when looking 5-10 years down the line is that research isn't just constraining ourselves to PhDs or academics. So today, for example, I think this is a big reason of why this is the right time to be doing something like this. Research has evolved so much past just doing an experiment, writing a paper, and the end product being a PDF. Like we all saw in January and February with DeepSeek, people weren't freaking out about the way the paper was written or even the methodology. People were excited about the fact that there was model weights and reproducible results. And ideally, we see AlphaXiv as being a central hub for all of this type of discussion and collaboration. So that extends beyond academia. People in industry, people that have been in industry for a long time are now interested in what's happening in AI. So that's where we see AlphaXiv being that central hub and a fully fledged network for all things research.
Yeah, for learning, so exciting. I think we're in a very read-only era of learning at the moment. If anyone's familiar with Chris Dixon's Read, Write, Own, I actually think it's a very similar model for learning, where right now everything's very passive. You're just sitting there passively consuming information. NextWork is definitely going to take learning into a write or create era where you're creating with an AI or creating with the product and other people your own learning experience. But beyond that, I'm super excited for this own era where people have ownership over their own skills, the credentials that they have. It just blows my mind that today still You can get a certification or a qualification in one country, jump on a plane, and suddenly that's not valid anymore. Like, come on. We've been traveling on planes for a long time. So I'm excited to see this realignment of learning with actually solving some of the world's toughest problems. I think somewhere along the line we have missed that, and that's a real shame. It needs to change. It's way overdue. So I'm very excited for that future for learning.
Yeah, for Glacier, I think, our tagline is building circular manufacturing, right? But when you think about circularity, I mean, everyone here knows the adage, like, you can't actually improve upon something unless you can measure it. And right now there's virtually no measurability for anything pertaining to our waste or recycling stream. So for Glacier, we really see an opportunity a couple of years from now to be that core source of truth, that source of record for our entire waste and recycling stream that can be used by recyclers, brands, producers, municipalities, legislators, everyone who has any vested interest in understanding what's being disposed of and what's being recovered. And then we also want to provide the tools to actually go and recover those materials effectively at high quality and at high volume to really make the idea of circularity not only a possibility, but actually economically viable such that it becomes the default way of using and reusing materials.
So another thing I kind of kept hearing in the industry was space data is extremely valuable and like extremely useful, but I didn't see a lot of like evidence for that. It's not as pervasive or as widely used as it should be. And kind of like talking to a lot of end users, it boiled down to really having low dollar cost of the data, really making it supremely accessible and easy to obtain, and allowing the end user to build applications that they need instead of like kind of guessing what kind of applications they might need. So what we really want to do over the long term is, maybe not a perfect analogy, but an easy to understand analogy is we want to build an AWS for space. We want to build extremely effective and cost-effective platform that allows people to leverage data for their use case depending on how much they need it for how long, and kind of obtain it easily and build applications on top of it. So like a dream would be someone in a college dorm builds an application using data from space, which I had no idea that could have been used in such a way. So that's what we are trying to do by building that layer.
For us, we see a future where online communities are healthy and where people can be their authentic selves on those communities, whether it's video games, social apps, marketplaces, and these places have almost zero fraud, almost zero misinformation as well. All of these things, if AI is sufficiently advanced and taking a careful look at everything that's happening, bad actors and toxicity can be almost completely eliminated, creating a much healthier like online ecosystem. It's like a totally different world, I think, from what we have today. That said, the same power can be used in negative ways for control, to create more misinformation. So it's like it's a very delicate kind of direction that we need to focus on. And so we're taking a really values-focused approach to bring about the healthy community kind of future. That's how we see it.
The AWS of space. You heard it here first. Tom, Dhaval, Rebecca, Amber, Rehaan, thank you so much. We believe in you. We are rooting for you. Thank you for taking time out of your very busy lives to be here today.